Alpha Phi Alpha's Sphinx Talk with Brother Eric Christopher Webb is sponsored by Good Health Wins. For more content, subscribe now.
Hi, this is Eric Webb, and welcome to another episode of Sphinx Talk. Today, I have one of my good Alpha brothers, Brother Damon Hawkins, who is the Vice President of Acquisitions for Haltere, which is a real estate syndication firm.
That's correct.
And we also have you also meet his partner, Brother Kappa Frater. Let me excuse that, Kappa Frater. We're not going to bring him into the frat. Kappa Frater, Mikael Piles. So, welcome, Brother Hawkins.
Thank you, brother. Thank you. Welcome. Thank you for having me.
It's great. It's great to have you. Now, your company is, one more time, what's the name of the company again?
Company name is the Haltere Group.
The Haltere Group.
That's correct.
So, what exactly does the Haltere Group do?
So Haltere Group is a real estate syndication company. So essentially, we are a company that allows people to invest into multifamily commercial properties. All right, so 100 units and above. We have seasoned investors, we have intermediate investors, and we also have novice investors. So we lead in with education, but also we are looking to build generational wealth so that we can blaze a trail in our community financially.
Okay, so the company is based where?
The company is based in Los Angeles, California.
Okay, so let's kind of put things in reverse for
All
you.
right.
How did you get into this? And then, so tell me a little bit about yourself, your history, where you pledged, and how you moved and took this journey and got into this real estate industry.
Absolutely. So my name is Damon Hawkins, again, Vice President of Acquisitions with the Haltere Group. But I was initiated into Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated by way of the Epsilon Beta chapter seated at California State University, Fresno. I'm currently at Iota Zeta Lambda chapter that's seated in Compton, California, where I am the immediate past president, and I also serve as the fundraising chair for the Alpha Caring and Empowerment Corporation.
Okay.
How did I get to Haltere?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I have a very extensive corporate background. I've done franchise consulting.
Okay.
I've always been an entrepreneur that worked with entrepreneurs. I then transitioned into supply chain consulting, where I help companies they turn from $1 million companies to $1 billion companies through logistics and supply chain. And so essentially, I've been in corporate America the whole time, but I started fresh out of college investing in real estate. I bought a condo in Ladera Heights, if anybody is familiar with LA. And I sold that property in about 9 months, and I bought 2 properties. One was a 4-unit building. The other was a house that was zoned R3, meaning I could put 2 units on the back of that property. So I started generating some cash flow outside of my job, and I realized, wow, I'm generating money in my profession, but now my money is generating money in the real estate profession. Right. And so the light bulb kind of went off as it relates to being a real estate investor. So from there, fast forwarding from there, I've done flips, buy and holds. I've managed my own property for a period of time. And then I recently acquired a commercial property in 2019. Wow. Yeah, and so once I bought that commercial property, I realized that if I knew then what I know now, I would have gotten into commercial real estate much faster or much sooner.
Now, why is that?
Well, because it's there's some distinct differences when you purchase residential versus commercial. Now, I'm not knocking residential at all, because right. I made a significant impact on the residential side. One of the things in the residential space, right, in order to get a value of that property, you need a certain mile radius of your property, people to have their value set, right? So these properties have to sell for a certain amount in order for you to get your value.
Right, the comps.
The comps, right, comparables. Well, in commercial, there's more of a focus on the financial statement. So if you can lower expenses, or if you can increase the value of the property, meaning raising the rents, you will immediately appreciate the valuation on that property. And so because you're able to do that in a commercial space, you're able to grow your equity much faster.
Okay.
And your cash flow.
Okay.
Now, when you're dealing with 100 units and above, you have to do tenant improvements and capital improvements, right? And so now that's going to give you more depreciation, right? So you're growing your cash flow and you're also reducing your expenses at the same time. And then you have a larger tax depreciation on your taxes. So you lowering your tax basis and your cash flow at the same time.
Okay. So how did you move into working with or starting? Because I didn't ask you, or did you help found the Haltere Group?
No, actually there are 4 founding members, and Michael and I came in later on. So one of the founding members is Dennis Earl. He's the chairman and CEO of Haltere Group. He pledged at USC Alpha Delta chapter.
Okay.
Yeah, he's a brother. In '94, I crossed in '93 at Epsilon Beta chapter. Okay. So we've been knowing each other pretty much all our lives.
Right.
And so when he acquired his first fund through Haltere, he posted on Instagram, and I reached out to him. Okay. And I said, "Hey, brother, what are you doing right now?" And he's like, "I'm acquiring these multifamily assets. Let's set up a call and let's talk about it." So I ended up investing into Fund 2, into the second fund of Haltere Group. And so that from there, once I invested, I started telling everybody about it. I told all of our fraternity brothers, family and friends, and a lot of investors came and invested as a result of that. And that's how I became a partner of the organization.
Okay. So let's go back now and talk about how this works and how people can get involved and why it's important for people in our community to invest in the way that you guys have structured this.
Absolutely. So I feel it's important for individual investors to invest in this structure because, one, you can actually take the benefit of our expertise. So we're vertically integrated into asset management, acquisition, and construction management. So because we have those expertise in those areas, now you can benefit from our expertise while investing with us. Also, the general partners essentially put up their financials when it's time to invest. So now you can invest without putting up your financials, and you actually have the opportunity to see a property or a transaction happen from beginning to end. Okay? Another thing is, typically, we're in Los Angeles, so in order to buy a property in Los Angeles, it's a significant amount of money. Well, the entry-level investor with Haltere, they only have to invest $10,000, right? So our increments of ownership are increments of $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, all the way up to $5 million. So if you're a brand new investor and you actually want to learn this process, $10,000 actually makes you an investor. You get the ability to take advantage of cash flow, equity appreciation, and tax depreciation at the same time.
Okay.
You're able to watch that transaction happen from beginning to end, and then the next time we have a fund, you can actually do it again. That makes sense?
Right.
So this is why it makes sense to invest with us. You actually get to learn while you earn.
Okay. Now, I don't have so for those out there, I'm not getting a title on the property. I have a piece of...
You have a pro rata share of ownership. Yep.
In the fund, and you set up individual funds based on every purchase, or...
So every fund has its own LLC. Okay, and so you actually are a pro rata share of ownership into the LLC.
Right.
Okay, and then that's how all of your benefits pay out to you per fund.
Okay.
And you can do that for every single fund.
Okay. How many funds do you have?
Currently, we are on Fund 6, which is our New Orleans property.
Okay.
All right, it's 132 units. Currently, it's 99% occupied. It actually, we actually have it under contract for $9.3 million. And we actually did the due diligence on that property, and we found that that property is valued at $15 million based on other properties in that area. So we're working into that property with close to $6 million in equity.
So how do I profit from it if I give you $10,000 on one of these particular funds? Let's say I jumped in early with this particular fund. When do I see any kind of return?
So if you invest in this property, based on the amount of money you invest, you will get a pro rata share of ownership. Based on that pro rata share of ownership, you will get paid out quarterly. Okay. You will also get your K1. A K1 is basically like a 1099, or it's like what you get for your tax returns in real estate. So you get a K1 at the end of the year, and that will allow you to take advantage of the depreciation based on your pro rata share of ownership. Okay. And then you're allowed to adjust your gross income down based on that pro rata share of depreciation. That, and then also equity. So as the property value grows, your pro rata share of equity will grow as well.
Okay. So how many, I don't want to say, do I say investors or shareholders?
Investors.
Investors?
Yeah,
I'm
investors.
Just trying to make sure.
Yeah, thank you for using the correct terminology, because that could definitely mess us up.
Okay,
correct.
So how many investors do you have in any particular one of these funds?
So so in one fund, for example, we may need to raise $2.5 million in order to acquire this asset.
Okay.
Now, we may have a bunch of small investors at $10,000, or we might have one big investor that invests 2.5. So it's hard to say how many investors. It's just based on how much money is raised and who brings in the money until we reach that number to actually acquire that asset.
Okay, so how do you spread the word about this? It seems that there needs to be a lot of education before you can bring somebody in.
Correct.
Right? Because in our community we have a good amount of distrust, right? Someone saves all their money and they're like, okay, I'm going to turn it over to this gentleman who I don't know that well, who has invest in real estate, right? And you're going to take this money and you're going to grow my money. So how do you go about basically spreading the word about your company and then educating folks about investing in this way and not going out on their own?
Correct. Yeah, we lead in with education. Before we even receive an investor, we do a pretty thorough education, thesis around what it is we do and how we do it. And part of it, we want our investors to feel extremely comfortable because we want them to actually come back and repeat the process again. That's how you build generational wealth, and that's how you speed up the ability to build equity in real estate. So first things first is we lead in with education through all of our, we pretty much we'll do like a group presentation. Like we'll go to all the regional conventions. We've gone to the Langston Bar Association and we speak before them. We'll go to the All Cycles clubs. There's all these different groups that get together and they have, extra money. We actually talk to them about taking their extra money and investing in real estate. And typically what will happen is, a lot of those investors will raise their hand and we'll do individual sessions with them to show them exactly, okay, this is how it applies to you and how you can actually make this work. Also, how we protect the investors. They all sign what we call a PPM, or a private placement memorandum. It's like a 100-page document. When I invested, I signed a private placement memorandum, and I actually had my attorney review it just so I knew I was going to be telling other people about this. And so essentially, we have documentation that protects our company, and it also protects the investor so that they don't feel like they're just giving some money to some random group of people and we're going and acquiring these assets. So 1 is education, 2 is documentation, 3 would be like one-on-one meetings with them so that they feel comfortable and they continue to grow with us. Because one of our tenets is to turn a novice investor into an intermediate investor into a seasoned investor.
So what about the level of risk? There's risk with all investments. What about the level of risk with this kind of investment?
Our chairman and CEO says it all the time. The risk is that you lose your money, right?
Okay.
So we don't pull no stops on the risk, right? But there's risk with everything. Now, what do we do to try and help alleviate the risk? That's where our expertise comes in. We have investors in our group. We've been investing for over 20 years. Our chairman and CEO started out fresh out of college going into commercial real estate. So he has all the expertise as it relates to acquisition, dealing with lenders, negotiating, and part of being successful in real estate is buying right. You have to buy the property right. And one of the things we do going into that is we have what we call a financial statement that we actually review with all the investors. So if we're looking at the New Orleans property, on our presentation, we go over income, expenses, insurance, and these are the risks that come along with it. And some of the ways we do alleviate risk is occupancy rate, right? So if you have 100 units and it's 95% occupied, well, if 5 people move out of that building, are you going to hurt that much?
No.
Probably not. So this is how we're alleviating the risk. And then, some people ask, well, what about the tornadoes or what about earthquakes? Well, here's a line item right here that says we're getting insurance to protect us in this asset in the event of a tornado or earthquake or things of that nature. Then also getting proper financing, right? So they want to understand, how are we financing these assets? Well, part of the dollars that we're raising to buy this asset, you're actually helping us get the financing, get the right kind of financing. All right.
So how long do I stay in this fund? So I invest. You guys, do you have a management company that manages the property?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do have typically when we're looking at an asset, it probably already has a management company in place.
Okay.
So one of our roles as in the acquisition team is to actually go and interview those property management, that property management company that's in place to see if we want to keep them or replace them. So, and essentially we do have a property management team that manages the property management team on set. So it's kind of like a double accountability, if you will. But you asked another question. How long do you stay in?
How long am I in this fund? How long do you hold these properties? I mean, do you just keep it and hold on to it and just continue to generate rents and that, or do you build it up and then eventually, if you guys get an offer from somebody else that wants to buy it, then you sell it? And do I have a say in it being sold? And then the return comes back to me after the sale.
Correct. So essentially, our goal is building generational wealth. So we're in it for the long term. We typically do not want to sell any property, but we do an evaluation on these properties every 3 years or so to see, how we're doing in terms of valuation. Should we keep this property? Should we do a 1031 exchange and sell that property and buy another property of equal value or higher to grow the wealth in that building? So sometimes we'll do that. We have, like I said, we have 6 funds. We've only sold 1 property since we've started business, and it made a strong business case for us to sell. One of the things that we look at in the investment cycle is when investors look at our investment trajectory, they're looking at trying to build wealth for retirement for their kids and things of that nature, or to just grow their cash flow. So that is ultimately the goal. We're really not trying to become flippers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Brother Hawkins. I'm going to bring on, have another conversation with your business partner. But thanks for coming on the Sphinx Talk.
All right. Thank you for having me.
All right. Welcome back to Sphinx Talk. And I'm your host, Brother Eric Christopher Webb. Today we are talking to the leadership team of the Haltere Group, which is a real estate syndication firm. Right now I'm with Kappa Frater. I'm making it clear. He's a new. With Kappa Frater, Michael Powles, and he is the vice president of the Haltere Group. How are you doing, brother?
Doing well, doing well. Thanks so much for having me today. It's not every day that I get to sit down with such distinguished gentlemen of Alpha Phi Alpha, but we're all brothers in Christ, right?
Yes,
so
yes,
it's all good, man. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, it's great to have you.
Thank you.
We just got done talking to one of your business partners, my frat brother,
Yes.
Brother Hawkins, and so I want to let's before we jump in and talk about what your role is with the Haltere Group.
Yes.
Let's talk about you.
Yeah.
Where are you from, brother?
Yes.
Where'd you pledge?
Yes.
That sort of thing.
Absolutely. So I am from Los Angeles, California.
Okay.
Born and raised. I pledged at the illustrious Gamma Kappa chapter of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated.
Okay.
That's Clark Atlanta University.
Okay.
Spring 2008 initiate.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Like I mentioned to you earlier, that I pledged at Lincoln University, and so I'm gonna give a shout out to all my boys of Kappa Alpha Psi,
Yes.
Epsilon chapter started.
There we
so
go.
you're watching it. I'm
Yo.
giving some love. I'm giving y'all some love, right?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
All right. Make sure I get some punch at home. All right. So how did you get in? So what's your background, brother?
Yes, absolutely. So my background coming out of Clark Atlanta University originated in the corporate world.
Okay.
Once I graduated, I went straight into corporate as conventional wisdom.
What was your major?
My major was international business and supply chain management.
Okay.
So I've always been very business oriented.
Okay.
And, I went the conventional route. Get your degree, go into the corporate world right away.
Right.
So I went to work for a Fortune 100 company, cut my teeth in Minneapolis, Minnesota, actually,
Okay.
for Target Corporation. So I worked there for a few years. And what I realized very early in my career was that working in the corporate world was never going to compensate me the way I deserved to be compensated.
Right.
Period. I realized I was making these corporations I was working for millions upon millions of dollars, and they were paying me pennies upon pennies upon pennies. And so
Right.
after doing that for about 4 years, working in the corporate world, and mind you, it was a great education, great springboard for the rest of my career, but I just was never the person that was going to be placated by a paycheck. I wanted to build wealth for myself and my family. I wanted to have agency over my destiny, and that's what catapulted me into real estate. So I left the corporate world behind cold turkey. I moved to New York City, and I got involved in residential real estate. I started off on the broker side, so I represented buyers and sellers,
Okay.
investors in the residential space, transacted millions of dollars in my residential career, and did really well for myself. But then I had a turning point. COVID hit. And when COVID hit in 2020, although I was at the time making a lot of money, doing very well for myself and my family, the pandemic caused everybody to sit down, right, and reassess their life.
Right.
And when you're a real estate broker, you have to be out there pounding the pavement,
Right.
showing buyers and sellers properties, right? You have to be interacting with people, doing open houses. But when we're sheltering in place because of the pandemic, I wasn't able to do any of that. And I realized that, wow, the water could be cut off at any time. So even though I was doing very well for myself, I needed to put myself in a position where the water could not be shut off. And the only way that I know how to do that is by being an owner and being an investor. And so that is what brought me to the Haltere Group, where I now serve as the vice president. We own almost 500 units of apartment units, and we're doing incredible business.
So what's the revenue like? I didn't get a chance to talk to your
Yes.
partner about the revenue.
Absolutely.
Of the company.
So we look at revenue in two ways, right? So the first way we look at our shareholder returns,
Okay.
which is extremely important because, as Damon mentioned, we are a real estate syndication, meaning that we galvanize investors from all walks of life, all backgrounds, and all levels in order to participate with us in the acquisition of these high-value assets. So our first charge is, how are we giving these investors a return? This is their hard-earned money that they're entrusting us with. We want to make sure that we're giving them cash flow. We want to make sure we're giving them tax depreciation, and we want to make sure we're giving them equity. So when you look at our numbers over the past 4 years, our funds have appreciated over $12 million in equity alone. One of the great reasons to get into commercial real estate, because the equity in commercial accelerates much faster than residential.
Right.
We tell people the same energy you put into buying a house, the same money oftentimes you put into buying a single family investment property, Put that money into a commercial property.
Right.
Put that energy into a commercial property because the returns are so much greater. We've been averaging across all of our funds about an 8 to 8.5% return on the cash, which is much greater than you're getting at your major banks.
Right.
You're not getting that at Chase. You're not getting that at Wells Fargo. Even a high yield savings account right now is giving you 5.5% return. But with us, you're getting 8 to 8.5% return. And that's just, once again, on the cash. Now, the equity is where it's really at, which is where the 12 million is. Now, the flip side, you asked about the revenue. So that's shareholder returns. But we're generating operating cash flow every time tenants pay rent, right? So across all of our funds, I don't have the exact numbers, but we're doing at this time probably close to $500,000, almost $1 million a month. You see what I'm saying? Wow. It's tremendous revenue because you have to figure this is commercial real estate, and every single month, for the most part, those tenants are paying rent. You always get your outliers that aren't paying or paying late, but that's generating a lot of revenue for the company.
So the goal of this company is basically to build generational wealth.
That's right.
And are you marketing to the African American community more so than other communities, or you're just taking money from everybody?
So when you look at the historical numbers of real estate investors throughout the United States, African Americans only account for 8.5% of all real estate investors, which is tremendously low. And it's actually a tragedy because real estate investing is the cornerstone of wealth creation in this country. Right. It goes back to the beginning of time. Land acquisition, civilizations, right? People always need a place to live. So when you're thinking about real estate ownership, our people need to be a big chunk, way more than 8.5%. Right? So our charge at the Haltere Group is to get that number up. So I'm proud to say that out of all of this progress we've had, 99% of our investors come from the African American diaspora. So you look at the United States, only 8.5% of representation comes from African Americans. You look at Haltere Group, and we're at 99%.
So how many investors are we talking about? Individual investors do you have?
Individual investors right now, we have 133 and growing. So we're looking to get that number up to 1,000, 10,000, 100,000. We want this to be a household conversation. When I grew up, I don't know about you, but in my household, we weren't talking about real estate investing.
Not at all.
You know what I'm saying? We weren't talking about building generational wealth. It just wasn't a conversation at the dinner table. And we want to change that because we know that other groups are having those conversations, and we should too, because it starts young. It's foundational. When you tell your children, hey, this is how you buy a house, this is how you establish credit, this is how you invest, this is how you save. When you imbue that sort of education at an early age, it just becomes who they are. It's second nature, right? And they don't have to learn it later on in life like most of us did. I went to Clark Atlanta University. I'm extremely proud of my institution. I got a wonderful education. It's propelled me to where I am today. But I didn't have any classes on real estate investing. I didn't have any classes on entrepreneurship. I didn't have any classes on wealth building. I didn't have any classes on any of the things that truly are needed to separate yourself in a socioeconomic capacity in this country.
And I went to Lincoln University in Pennsylvania, and I didn't have a class like that as well.
There you go.
What are you doing now to connect those dots
with
HBCUs?
Yes. So, wow, as you know, we've been talking about HBCUs. Me and my partners have a special penchant for the historically black college and university community. I'll say this. I graduated from CAU, but when you look at the landscape of HBCUs in the United States, there are currently 107 historically black colleges and universities. And out of what these 107, we would wager to say about 90 to 95% of those numbers are undergoing an extreme student housing epidemic. You can look at the greatest institutions from Morehouse College, Clark Atlanta, Spelman, Howard, Hampton, and you can look at the ones that people might not know about as much. And across the board, these iconic institutions are undergoing an extreme student housing crisis. They're underfunded, they're overlooked by institutional capital, so they're undercapitalized, they're undermaintained, and it's just egregious. And the reason that we feel it's so egregious, and you can tell my passion about this, is because to this day, in 2024, historically black colleges and universities still account for the highest percentage of black doctors, the highest percentage of black lawyers, engineers, and the list goes on and on. Right. industry that you can find, HBCUs are responsible for producing the greatest cache of professionals coming out of our institution. So we have to protect them. So Haltere Group, what we're doing is we are identifying all these institutions that need student housing, that need capital, and we are purchasing land adjacent to these universities. We're working with the city council, we're working with university brass, we're working with the mayors, and we are developing top of the line luxury student housing units. We're developing faculty housing, mixed use, and we are bringing development and attention back to our institutions.
When did this start?
We started this about a year and a half ago. Our first foray into this space is Tuskegee University. So me and my partners went out and acquired 5 acres of land in Tuskegee, Alabama. We purchased it and we own it outright. We are currently in phase 4 of development on that project, which is the architectural phase. Once we get past all the zoning and permitting on this phase, then we'll be able to break ground. We're looking to break ground on Haltere at Tuskegee in Q4 of this year, and then students should be able to enter these dorms and these facilities in, I'll say, the second half of 2025. This is a $30 million project, but it's one of many. We're currently in negotiations for 42 acres of land in Prairie View, Texas. 42 acres, we're calling it our 42 acres and a mule. And we're developing this land for Prairie View A&M. We're talking about student housing. We're talking about mixed use. Let's bring some coffee shops, some Starbucks on there. Right. Top of the line facilities that our next generation of leaders need to have. And we're bringing it to them.
So what is the attraction to an HBCU to partner with you in this way?
Well, I can tell you the attraction is, one, they are getting a bona fide team that is dedicated to enriching and improving the community. When you start to do these sorts of initiatives, it brings visibility across the board. You get media attention, you get stakeholder attention, you get alumni attention, right? Parents want to send their kids there. When we tell folks that we are in the middle of developing a $30 million student housing project for Tuskegee University, do you think you want to send your son that's currently a junior in high school? Do you think Tuskegee's going to be on his list if you know that a group like mine is developing top of the line student housing? He's going to go there and have not just a great education, but a great living experience. He's not going to have to worry about the picketing that they were doing at Howard University because of the pest infestation.
Right.
They're not going to have to worry about the satellite housing and the remote classes that they had to do at my alma mater, Clark Atlanta University, because of the flood that just happened, because the infrastructure isn't good. These are things that parents and our kids should not have to worry about. And another thing that it does is it brings attention to our endowments. When you look at the endowment of HBCUs,
right,
man, it's horrific.
Yeah.
Harvard University alone has a $50 billion endowment, just Harvard University. And when you look at all of our HBCUs, it's a little over $5 billion combined. That means one institution, one university, Harvard, has 10 times the endowment of 107 historically black colleges. It's absolutely ridiculous. And by developing in these areas, it shows our politicians, it shows our community leaders, it shows our advocates, both in the black community and outside, that these are institutions that deserve TLC attention and deserve our investments as well.
So you guys are bringing capacity to these HBCUs as far as when you do these deals, right?
Yes.
This initiative. So
yes,
when you approach an HBCU,
absolutely.
How do you go about approaching them, first of all?
Well, the good thing is it's a very easy pitch, if you will, right? Because what tends to happen is, as I mentioned earlier, most of these institutions are in gross need of more student housing. One of the things with Tuskegee University when we started those conversations was Tuskegee is now in the top 5 in terms of enrollment of all HBCUs because of the program development, because of the curriculum advancement at Tuskegee. They are getting more and more students that are enrolling in the school, but it's outpacing the actual student housing. So students are having to travel from Montgomery, Alabama. They're having to travel from Albany. They're having to come from miles away. Sometimes it takes kids almost an hour to get to campus, and we're talking about, listen, I don't know about you, brother, but when I was in school, if it took me an hour to get to class, I ain't going.
You're not going.
I wouldn't have graduated.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So you have all these parents sending their kids out of state, and they don't have anywhere to stay. And when they do find somewhere to live, they have to figure out, how do I take a bus? How do I carpool? If my friend's not available to take me, I can't make it to class that day. So it's a very easy connection that we're making with the university, because we're saying, hey, we are coming in to help you solve this problem.
Now, are they, so is it the institution an investor in this process, or does Haltere own it outright and then they supply the tenants?
So
how does that work?
That's a wonderful question, and no two universities are created equal, right? These deals are done in a multitude of ways. Sometimes we partner in close proximity to the institution, to where they are involved in bringing the students to us, to the facilities. So, we go to a university and maybe they are saying, hey, this is a part of our student housing availability, right? And so literally the university is sourcing the students and the residents of the homes. However, some universities might not want that same sort of partnership. So then maybe we're not a part of campus housing, but we are a close campus housing option, right? Because regardless of the university buy-in or partnership, we are still identifying land opportunities close to the university.
Right, so students and other folks, local folks in the community, could still buy in and rent.
Exactly.
And whatnot, and it'd still be students would also rent as well.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, and when it comes to paying rent, depending on the way that the partnership is arranged, sometimes the university is able to supplement the student rent, right? Whether that be through grant funding, whether that be through tuition, right? Universities, when they have their campus housing, oftentimes they supplement the housing cost, right? So working with Haltere, sometimes we have those arrangements, or other times the students might be responsible, or the parents, for paying that rent outright.
So far you're working with 2 universities?
So far we are already working with Tuskegee University. We're in talks with Prairie View, and we're in talks with about 5 other universities. Don't necessarily want to put the names out there because these are early conversations, but what I would tell your audience is, anyone out there that has a connection and a relationship to an HBCU, please send them our way. We are in the business of buying back our communities, developing our communities, and bring the power back to our hands, right? Because another thing that we want people to know is, a lot of these HBCUs, the student housing, the facilities, they aren't owned by us. These are historically black colleges and universities, but historically, we don't own the land, right? Over the years, a lot of people don't know this. We've sold off the land to people that don't look like us when it comes to the development, because for so many years, we've been redlined, we've been systemically kept out of this sort of development and commercial real estate opportunity. The folks behind the scenes that actually own these facilities, they don't look like me and you. So when we go to these universities, we say, not only is this an opportunity to enrich the experience for your students, but it's an opportunity to have ownership brought back to us. Our investors, 99%, come from the black diaspora. Our partnership group, 100% black owned. You see what I'm saying? And we're targeting HBCU communities. We are absolutely bolstering the agency, the ownership, and the control of our community.
Wow. So what's next for the Haltere Group?
What's next, man? We are so excited. We are getting ready to enter into a new stratosphere of real estate, and that is the institutional sector of real estate. So for the past 4 years that the Haltere Group has been around, we've been using a friends and family bootstrap model. We've been coming to conventions like this one. We've been speaking to good brothers like you, our moms, sisters, brothers, aunties, churches, things of that nature, right? And galvanizing the community, which is extremely important. But in order to truly accelerate our efforts and have a global impact on what we're trying to do, we have to get institutional capital. We have to talk to hedge funds. We have to talk to VCs, angel investors. We have to start bringing in millions and millions of dollars into our projects so that we can accelerate our business model at a faster rate. And that's the next stage, institutional. When you peel back the onion of commercial real estate, typically in order to even enter into that conversation, you need about 500 units that you own, right? That's kind of a line of, it's an unspoken line of demarcation, which allows institutional players to say, oh, these ain't your normal mom and pops.
Right.
These guys know what they're doing, right? So we are approaching 500 units. By the end of this year, God willing, we should be over 700 units under management, which is huge for a black-owned company that started with a collection of gentlemen from Alpha Phi Alpha and Kappa Alpha Psi.
Wow. That is amazing.
Yes, sir. Yes,
That
sir.
is amazing. So, how can folks get in touch with you guys?
Absolutely. You can get in touch with the Haltere Group by visiting our website. It's easy to find, www.halteregroup.com. That's HALTERE Group. You can also find us on all social media platforms. Just type in Haltere Group, or they can find us on YouTube by typing in Helping Others Win. We've started the top podcast other than Sphinx Talks, by the way.
Appreciate that.
Okay? So I'll say we're the number 2. We're a close second. But we started the How with Haltere podcast. It's called Helping Others Win. And essentially, we broadcast on YouTube.
Okay.
We're on Spotify. We're on Apple, Amazon, anywhere where folks get their podcast.
Right.
And we bring on guests to talk about wealth building, to talk about community advocacy, to talk about mental health in the Black community, female empowerment, and everything in between. We are literally founding this and creating this platform to help the community win.
Well, this is amazing. And thank you so much for
Thank you.
joining me
Thank
on
you.
Sphinx Talk.
Absolutely.
Definitely, brother.
My brother, it's
All
a
right.
pleasure, for sure.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Stay tuned for your next episode of Sphinx Talk.
See you later.
Thank you for watching Sphinx TV. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe now for more content from the brothers of Alpha Phi Alpha. 06.